Welcome to another episode of DL Jones Show Live. I'm your host, DL Jones, and I want to say welcome everybody. Today, I wanted to get on here and talk about a few of the things that I've been watching the past week or so. I got several things here, and I actually got a list. If you look at the title, I list some of the things here. But to start things off, I'm just going to go through what I'm going to be talking about. The first thing on my list that I'm going to be talking about is a little movie called The Northman. I'll be talking about that. I saw that last weekend. Pretty interesting movie, but I'm gonna be telling you my thoughts on that. Then next, I have that Nicolas Cage movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. That was a pretty cool movie. I'm gonna be talking about that. Then I'm gonna be talking about Moon Knight. I talked about Moon Knight a little bit on my last episode, my last live. The season is over now, so I'm gonna be talking about it again. My thoughts on the season, what I thought about the last episode. I think when I talked about it last, it was probably around episode 3 was when I talked about it last. And then last but not least, the topic that I really, really want to get up here and talk about was a movie I saw over the weekend. And of course, it's Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. I saw that, and I'm going to be talking about that. Now, when I get to that point, I'm not going to do all out spoilers. There may be some, but I'm not going to spoil it for you, if that makes any sense. I'm going to talk about it as much as I can without spoiling the things that I feel like you probably need to see for yourself and not hear about it from me. But it might be some things, if it comes up in conversation that I might talk about, there may be, borderline, I'd say borderline spoilers, but this is not a spoiler chat when it comes to the Multiverse of Madness. So if you never watched my show before, I'm DL Jones. This is the DL Jones Show. On my channel, I talk about all types of movie-related topics, TV show-related topics, anything like things that I watch, whether it be on the big screen or the little screen or the tiny screen, which I don't watch a lot of stuff on the tiny screen. And the tiny screen, I say, would be like the phone, I don't watch a lot of stuff on the tiny screen. I usually stick to things you see in the theater or things I can watch on my TV. When it gets too much smaller than that, these things here, I can't be sitting for a long period of time looking at stuff that's too small. But yeah, I'm glad you're tuning in to check this show out. This is my third live stream, and I think I'm going to start doing more of these. I want to build out my live stream a little bit. Also, if you haven't heard of this little site, I don't know if it's new or not, but I just found out about it. It's a site called Locals. I just signed up on that site. Locals.com. It's a site, you can go there and people have a lot of different communities on bunch of different topics, and you can subscribe or follow a lot of these different communities. And I just created my community there. I'm gonna be talking about movies and TV shows, some different stuff that I might not be talking about on this channel. You can go over there, find me. The name, my community is called the DL Jones Show, just like this channel here. I don't have anything on it yet. I just created the account yesterday, so I'm still going to be filling it out. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing there, I actually was thinking about doing that on this channel and have it like a members thing, because YouTube got the member section. I was thinking about doing that on this channel. And what it is like instant, in the moment, my thoughts of movies that I go to see. Like when I go to the movies and I watch a movie at the theater or something like that, what I kind of wanted to do was just start coming and making quick live videos of like, as soon as I get out the theater and get in the car, I tell you what my thoughts are right then before I had a chance to let myself process what I just watched and everything, my thoughts right then of what the movie is, what I thought about the movie. I think I'm gonna start doing that, but I'm gonna do it on Locals. So go ahead and check out Locals, and I'm gonna put the link up here. I got my page, so if you want to go check it out, and follow me. Let me pull this up and put my link up here. All right, so it should be scrolling at the bottom here in a little bit. So go ahead and check it out. It's DLJonesShow.locals.com. You should find my page. There's not much on it now, but go ahead and follow me now and just so you be ready for it, because I'm going to start putting stuff up there this week. This week, I'm going to start putting stuff up there. So let's get into what I'm going to be talking about. The first thing I want to talk about is this movie that I saw. It's called The Northman. Now, The Northman seems like a movie. I heard about this movie a few months ago. It seems like a movie that'll be right up my alley. I kind of like those Lord of the Rings / Game of Thrones style movies. Like kind of got like a little bit of high fantasy and kind of got like the sword fighting and bows and arrows and magics and creatures and all of that kind of stuff. And when I saw the preview for The Northman, I figured that was going to be one of those types of movies. I was like, yeah, this movie looks like it's right up my alley. Let's see who is in this movie. I'm gonna pull up my screen here and pull up my screen here so I can see who's in The Northman. Let's see how you do this here. Bear with me 1 minute while I get this straight right quick. All right, here we go. Here we go. The Northman. There we go right there. Okay, so if you look at the synopsis, let me make me a little bit bigger here. No, not that big. Not there either. I'll just go to my normal spot. Okay, so if you look at the synopsis, right? So it just says from visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Northman, an action-filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder. Pretty simple plot. I mean, the movie itself has a pretty simple plot. Basically, the whole thing is you have Alexander Skarsgård. He plays the main character, and also you have Nicole Kidman in it. It's pretty cool, but basically it takes place, they're Vikings, and basically it takes place back in the Viking time frame and everything. And it has a lot of what I was thinking about, what I wanted from those types of movies, when I went to go see it. But basically the story is, Alexander Skarsgård it starts off with Alexander Skarsgård. He's a kid and he's the prince. He's the prince. He's the one that's the heir to the king of this like, I don't know if it was a tribe or a kingdom. It kind of looked like a tribe, but they were in a castle and stuff, but it didn't look that large, but he's like the prince. He's the heir to the throne, and it starts off, it looks like it's right after a war, because the father, who's played by Ethan Hawke, he's the king. He was injured in battle. At first when it starts off, you don't know he's injured, but basically he come back from war and he's celebrating their victory from the war and everything, and they're talking about the son, the Alexander Skarsgård, which at this point he's a little kid, but they're talking about how he is going to be the heir to the throne, and the father, the king, is saying that I'm not going to always be here. So they go through this ritual. It's like a ritual that every kid has to go through, when, to prepare them for being the king. But it's like a really, really weird ritual. I'm not going to spoil what the ritual is or anything. I mean, it's not much to it. It's just weird. But I'm not going to spoil what it is. But they have to go through a ritual. And after they go through the ritual, then that kid should be ready to, be on the throne, ready to take the role as a king when the need arises, So the king, Ethan Hawke's character, he is married to Nicole Kidman's character, Queen Gudrun. I guess that's how you say it. I'm never good at these names. I can go to a movie and hear them say the name a million times throughout the movie and leave out not knowing what their movie name is, But anyway, what happens is after they go through the ritual, after the king and the kid goes through the ritual, his father is killed. His father is killed by a person, someone betrays them. I'm not going to spoil too much, but somebody betrays them and the father is killed. And that's where you see on a commercial when he's like, I'm going to avenge my father. I'm going to save my mother. I'm going to kill so-and-so, whatever. I can't remember the exact phrase, but he says it over and over again. Kind of remind me of Game of Thrones in that respect, because if you remember in Game of Thrones, the TV show, and also in the books too, the little girl from the Game of Thrones, which I can't remember her name. Told you I'm bad with the names. But the little girl from the Game of Thrones, the young girl, well, she was a little girl in the TV show, but she was a really, really young girl in the books. But she had this thing where she had a list of names of people that she wanted to kill, throughout the thing, because they're all people that has done something wrong to her family or to her. And throughout that series, she would always chant these names. I guess she'd go to sleep, she would chant these names, and it was a long list of names, but that kind of reminded me of that, because, he said that, I'm gonna kill this person, I'm gonna save my mom, because the person, ambushed them as they were coming out of the cave after they did their ritual and killed his father in front of him. They tried to kill him too, but he got away. But then he saw them take his mother away. They captured his mother and took his mother away, the queen, So the whole movie was about him trying to get revenge on the man that killed his father, and to try to save his mother, who was captured and taken away, So after that happens, he gets away, then it jumps, years. He's an adult now. That's when you now see Carl Skarsgård. I mean, not Carl Skarsgård. What in the world I'm talking about? Alexander Skarsgård. That's when you see him on the screen. This guy right here. That's when you see him as an adult, but now he's like a part of this kind of Viking tribe or something. I don't know what they were. It was like a tribe. They all kind of, they were howling at the moons. They all kind of seemed like they kind of patterned their actions and their viciousness and everything on being a wolf. They were howling and all of this kind of stuff, trying to mimic wolves. And you see them and they get into this battle, and it's like a vicious battle and everything. But basically that's the plot of the movie. He does that, and then he ends up in a position where he can get revenge on the guy who killed his father, and the whole rest of the movie, this happens probably about after the first third of the movie, he ends up getting in the situation where he can start planning his revenge, So the whole rest of the movie is him planning his revenge, which of course he couldn't just go in and kill him. It's the Vikings, and it's like a lot of ritualistic stuff. So it's like he had to do it a certain way, he had to go through a certain process, even down to the point where he had to use a specific weapon. And the weapon had to be something that was told. He had to be told which weapon to use by like some kind of, I don't know what that guy was, like a witch. He was like some kind of witch or something like that. Some kind of weird guy, but it was like he had to do it a specific way with a specific weapon. He couldn't just go in, even though he was in a position to kill the guy right from that point on. He couldn't just go in there and kill the guy. He had to do it a specific way. He had to be told which way to do it, and he had to follow it that way. So the whole rest of the movie was him trying to do it that way, get his revenge, And one thing about Vikings, when a lot of movies and of course the TV show Vikings, the one thing that they do is that they worship, they all kind of their life, they look at it like their lives they're supposed to die in battle. They're not supposed to die from being sick or something like that. They're supposed to die in battle. And if they die in battle, then they're brought to Valhalla, which is sort of like the Vikings version of heaven, So that's what he wanted. He was going to get his revenge, and then he figured he would die doing it, and he would go to Valhalla, But it was a pretty fun watch. On just my first thoughts of the movie, one thing about the movie is that it looked awesome as far as the cinematography, the landscapes, it looks awesome. It kind of gave you that feeling. A large part of this movie is spent on this like sort of like a little, I wouldn't even say a village because it wasn't much there except for where the guy, like the leader of that little town, lived. And then it was like little huts because it was just a man. And of course, his mother is there, and his mother is now married to that man. And he has people that work for him, but then he has a lot of slaves, So it was just basically like like an encampment, like sort of like a barracks or something. It wasn't a kingdom or anything. So he was living on this thing, plotting his revenge, plotting his vengeance. And that was basically the whole movie, So that little village, I mean, it kind of gives you a feel, and it takes place, I think they were in Iceland, but it kind of gives you that feel, just like the vistas and the rolling hills and all of that kind of stuff. It kind of gives you that feel, as you watching it, it feels like you're in this land that's away from everybody else. It wasn't near any other towns or cities or anything like that. But it just kind of gave you this weird feeling. Kind of it left your mind to really imagine, how it would be to be in that little village, So basically the whole movie, he's just there and he's just doing stuff, plotting to try to get his revenge. But a lot of stuff happened in this movie that was weird. Like, of course, Viking stuff don't necessarily always have magic, sometimes it's all just battles, sometimes it's all just battles and sword plays and bows and all of that kind of stuff. But then sometimes you read stories or see stories like this where it does have magic. And this one kind of straddled the line. I mean, there was magic in here, like throughout his time, he ended up meeting a person, another woman who was sort of like a magic. She had like did like earth magic, but the magic that she did wasn't like really obvious. When the stuff happened, it was like situations where you're like, is this magic or not? Or is this just coincidence of things that happen, But I thought that was interesting. It was interesting watching this, and these things were happening that kind of appear to be I think it was magic. I don't know. Like there was a scene where he had this whole fight, with some kind of creature, and when he finishes that fight and he defeats the creature, then it jumps back to him before he even saw the creature looking at the little statue. So, and it makes you wonder, did he just imagine all of this, or did this fight really happen? But it was a lot of things that happened like that, but it was pretty interesting. One thing that I was surprised about in this movie, you see the trailers, it seemed like a lot of crazy, Lord of the Ring type war stuff going on, and it's about Vikings and swordplay. So I kind of assumed it was going to be a lot of action, but it wasn't a whole lot of action. It started off, it had one big action set piece sort of towards the beginning once he became an adult. But after that, it wasn't too much action throughout the movie. It was a lot of talking and plotting and planning and stuff, but it wasn't a whole lot of action. It was some action, but nowhere near what I was expecting when I walked into this movie. It was just I would say it wasn't enough action. I was kind of disappointed with the amount of action that it did not have, the lack of action that it had. But it didn't really take away from my enjoyment of the movie. It was just like, it was just a choice that they made, I guess. But other than that, I still thought it was interesting. I was involved with the story. The story was a plain one, it was just a basic revenge story. A kid sees his father get killed and grows up to be an adult and goes to get revenge on the person who killed his father. That was it was nothing really to it other than that. There was no special storylines, and the story itself didn't get drawn out into anything out of the ordinary. The only thing is that when I was watching it, I just kept wondering, why is it taking him so long to get his revenge? He could get it at any time. But they kind of put rules into play where he had to do it a specific way with a specific weapon and all of this kind of stuff. So I guess that justified it. But but to me, it kind of felt like it was just there to make a movie where there wasn't a movie, you know? Um, and I can't complain because it still was pretty cool watching it. A lot of the things that went on. I mean, I questioned, why is this happening like this? But I still enjoyed what I watched, what I saw on the screen. Some things in this movie was really weird. That was one thing that took me by surprise when I saw this movie. It was a lot of things that happened in this movie that was really, really weird. Weird. I don't know, weird, creepy stuff that happened in this movie. It was one of those movies where I'll tell you a story. Like, I was talking to my mother yesterday, and she was, of course, yesterday was Mother's Day. So I was talking to my mother, and she was telling me about her and my dad had went to do something, and when they finished, they was thinking about going to see a movie. So they went to the movie theater to try to see what was playing, but all of the movies that they were interested in watching were playing at later times, and they didn't want to stick around that long to watch the movie. So they ended up not going. But one of the movies that my dad mentioned going to see was this movie, The Northman. And my mother's not really the type of person that she doesn't really like a lot of violence in movies, but this movie had a lot of violence in it. Like I said, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of action scenes. I mean, there was some, but not a whole lot like you would think. But the ones that they did have were really, really violent. And then the weird stuff that happened in this movie was also, it was like weird, weird stuff to where to where I was telling when she told me they was thinking about that movie, the first thing I told her is that, yeah, you wouldn't have saw this. You wouldn't have liked this. I mean, it would have completely not been her thing, because it was some weird stuff happened in this movie. But I enjoyed it. But I do think if you are somebody that doesn't like a lot of violence in your movies, it might turn you off a little bit, because there was violence and there was weird stuff that involved violence. Um, So if you kind of a little bit squeamish or don't really care for a whole lot of violence, I would say maybe skip this one, or wait till you can watch it in a situation where you got control over how long, if you need to take a break in the middle of it or whatever. When you go to the movies, you got to sit right through or leave, but when if you're watching something like this at home and it gets to be too much for you, you can always pause it and come back to it later, stuff like that. You can watch it in small doses, and it may be a little bit better for you if you do it that way, because there was some like weird things, that happened in this movie. I mean, really, really weird. There was a scene in this movie. I'm not even gonna spoil it. You can watch it when you go check it out if you've seen it. But yeah, it was pretty good. Now, one thing about this movie that I kind of the end of the movie, every movie like this got to have like the big fight scene at the end, the thing that makes the whole movie worth watching. The whole point of the movie is the thing that happened at the end. And I can't say that I was completely satisfied with how the movie ended, even though I did like the end battle, the end event, that happened at the end. I did like it. It was cool. I mean, it looked awesome. Um, and the action was pretty good, but I just didn't like how it ended. But I think that's more of a personal preference for me versus versus if the ending was any good or not. It was like something that I didn't want to happened. Um, but yeah, but I like the movie. It was pretty good. I was like, if you like Game of Thrones, you would probably like The Northman. The Northman is a lot weirder than Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has some weird stuff going on in there too, especially with with the brother and sister falling in love with each other and all that. Game of Thrones has some weird stuff going on too. This one kind of topped Game of Thrones a little bit. Of course, the violence topped Game of Thrones, but the action, even though Game of Thrones wasn't an action heavy show, um, it still had more action than the Northman, I think, now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe not. Maybe they're equal, you know. Um, but if you like the Game of Thrones TV series, you probably would like the Northman. It Pretty good show, pretty good show. And one cool scene they had in there was the mountain, you know, the mountain from Game of Thrones. Remember that guy, the real big guy? You know, a lot of times in Game of Thrones he had on the helmet and everything. He was in this movie and they had a pretty cool scene with him. Um that was pretty good. I like that scene. I'm not going to spoil it because you need to see it. Um but yeah, I would say check it out because it was pretty good. You know, it was a interesting, fun movie to watch. Well, I can't really say it's fun. These types of movies aren't necessarily fun. But I enjoyed watching it, and it kind of touched, you know, those things that I like about these type of movies. It had a little bit of like the magic, but it wasn't like in your face magic. It wasn't like, you know, magic wands or people doing spells. It was sort of like the witchcraft type magic where they do things and things happen and it's not like you see sparkly stuff, you know. It was that kind of magic, you know. Where when you look at it, you don't know if this was actually magic or not. You know, it was a lot of parts of this movie that things happen and you don't know if the things that you see on screen are actually things that really happened or is the interpretation of Alexander Skarsgård character, his interpretation in his mind of what is happening and not like what really actually happened, you know. And I thought that point was interesting, you know, for you to sit there and just think about that and try to piece that together, trying to figure out, wait a minute, did this happen or is he believing this, you know? But yeah, that's the Northman. And I would say go check it out. You know, you know, when I first saw this trailer, I liked it. And then I heard a review, which I've said before, I kind of don't like watching, reading, or listening to reviews of movies before I go to see them. I like to go in without hearing other people's thoughts so that when I do talk about it or when I do form my own opinions of the movie, it is completely my own opinions, not influenced by anything else. But I did happen to see a review of this movie. Well, actually, I listened to it. It was on a podcast. They talked about this movie. And the person that reviewed this movie really, really, really enjoyed the movie. This person was saying he thinks it's the best movie of the year so far. So I was I think it may have ruined me. That thought may have ruined me because I kind of don't feel that way. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. It was a pretty good movie, but I don't feel like it was anywhere near the best movie of the year or anything like that. I mean, this not the best movie of this year. And I can't really say that a whole lot of good movies have come out this year. I mean, this year has been better than last year, but I can't say a whole lot of really, really good movies have come out yet this year. And even with that in mind, I can't say that this is the best movie I've seen this year so far. Give me a little bit of drink. I don't have my coffee today. I was going to make some, but I'm out of coffee, so don't have any coffee today. So that's the Northman, and now I say go check it out. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about on this list, like I said, I got several things I want to talk about. Let me take the Northman off this screen here. Oh, Northman is not on the screen. So the next thing I want to talk about is let me pull this up. I don't even have this prepared yet. I'm gonna prepare it right now. Pull this up right now. Now, this is a movie that I heard about a couple of weeks ago. I mean, when I heard about it, it was in the theaters the very next week. I don't know how this got by me, But I heard about it a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, when I went to see a movie and I saw the previews for this movie, and I was like, I have to go see this. Um, so this movie is called. Sitting here pulling this up here. Bear with me for a minute. Take the Northman off here and pull this movie up. Oh, not that one. This one right here. If I can pull it up here. Sorry, it's taking me so long. This is actually my third time using this streaming software, and I still don't have it down to where I can just do stuff without thinking about it. I'm gonna have to work with it a little bit more before I get to that point. So this is the movie I'm talking about, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Okay, so this movie was pretty interesting. As you can see, Nicolas Cage is on this. Nicolas Cage is on this. Nicolas Cage is on the screen. Okay, so this movie stars Nicolas Cage, of course. You see him on the screen. But if you haven't seen the previews for this movie, I'll tell you what this movie is about. First, let's check out the synopsis right quick. So, and let me get the right label up here too. All right, so we have this movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is a really long, crazy name. I think a lot of people have just been shortening it down to Massive Talent, But basically, the synopsis says in this action-packed comedy, Nicolas Cage plays Nick Cage, channeling his iconic characters as he caught between a super fan, Pedro Pascal, and a CIA agent, Tiffany Haddish. It's funny. Tiffany Haddish is in this movie. I completely forgot she was in this movie. But yeah, you have Nicolas Cage, you have Pedro Pascal, you have Tiffany Haddish, and you have Neil Patrick Harris was in this movie also. He had a small role, and you had who's this other guy? The guy that used to be on Mad TV. What is his name? What is his name? I don't see him listed up here anywhere. I don't see him. Anyway, so we have Nicolas Cage, and the funny thing about this movie, when I saw the previews, the thing that I thought was pretty interesting was that Nicolas Cage is playing himself in this movie, or a fictional version of himself. The character he plays in this movie is called Nick Cage instead of Nicolas Cage, even though they do call him Nicholas a couple times in the movie. But he's playing like a version of himself, like a fictional version of himself. And basically, the way his character is set up in this movie is that he is a divorced father, with I think 16-year-old daughter. And he's struggling. His career has kind of been lacking and everything. And he's trying to get this new role, which this role he believes will turn his career around and bring him back to what he used to be, And of course, they use all of his real movies from his past, The Rock, at Raising Arizona, Guarding Tess, all of his movies in his past, they played him like he was really Nicolas Cage, even though they called him Nick Cage. But they used all of his movies, it was all brought up, and throughout this movie and everything. So he was, for all intents purposes, he was himself, But but he was looking to get this role, and he didn't get it, So after he didn't get it, he ended up taking this job that was going to pay him $1 million to go to this island for this man's birthday party in Colombia. It was supposed to be like some kind of rich guy, So he didn't want to take it because he kind of felt insulted when he first was told about this job. And in this movie, Neil Patrick Harris, who didn't play himself, but he played his agent, and he's the one that sent him on this job, So when he gets to the island, some weird stuff happened, and that's where Tiffany Haddish's character come in. She's a CIA agent, and they were watching this guy, the guy that hired him. They were watching this guy, which the guy that hired him is Pedro Pascal. They was watching this guy because they believed he was the head of a cartel. So when they saw Nicolas Cage show up at the airport, they was like, "What is Nicolas Cage doing here?" And what they ended up doing is they ended up talking Nicolas Cage into spying on the man for them, because there was a girl that was kidnapped, and they believed that Pedro Pascal's character was the one that kidnapped the girl and was hiding the girl somewhere on the grounds, on the compound. And since Nicolas Cage was there, they was like, okay, they wired him up and said, "We need you to help the CIA to save this girl," So what it turns out is, he wasn't just there for a birthday party. He was there because Pedro Pascal, is a big fan of Nicolas Cage. His character in the movie was a big fan of Nicolas Cage. So not only did he want to spend his birthday with Nicolas Cage, he had written a script, and he wanted Nicolas Cage to read it and tell him his thoughts on it. Nicolas Cage didn't know anything about that because his agent didn't tell him about it, didn't tell him anything about the script or anything. So once he got with the CIA, he had to, and he decided to work with the CIA to try to get this information. He had to stay on the compound with this man so he can try to help the CIA find the missing girl, the kidnapped girl, But what happened is he didn't believe. By the time the CIA approached him, he had spent some time with Pedro Pascal's character, and he didn't believe that man was like some kind of, cartel leader. He didn't believe it. He was like, "This guy's a nice guy." He was like, I don't know. He said he don't believe it. He thought the CIA was wrong, But as things started happening, as he started spending more time, even though his friendship with Pedro Pascal built, and they kind of became friends, and they were doing a lot of stuff together, he did see some things that made him think that maybe this guy is a cartel leader. But anyway, the whole movie was basically him trying to infiltrate that cartel or whatever. And the way he did it was by befriending Pedro Pascal's character, and they were acting like he read the script, and he was acting like he wanted to write a movie with Pedro Pascal's character. So they spent a good part of the movie pretty much doing crazy stuff, working on the script, coming up with ideas and all of this kind of stuff. But the movie, it was weird because this movie is, of course, when you see the commercials, it looked like a comedy, but it also looked like it was an action movie. And the movie pretty much started off as a comedy. It's sort of like like a buddy comedy type movie, with Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal. They had some really funny scenes together. It was really entertaining, and I enjoyed a lot of it. It started kind of slow for me, things took a little longer than I expected to get going, but I still enjoyed it. And it was a lot of comical parts of this movie that made you smile. I wouldn't say it made me laugh out loud, but it was a lot of parts that made me smile. And then about halfway through the movie, that's when the action stuff starts kicking in a little bit. It was still humorous throughout the whole rest of the movie, but it becomes more, you get more action in it. And when I say action, I don't necessarily mean like fight scenes or shootouts and stuff, but more like thriller type action where he's trying to make sure he don't get caught doing this, or they're trying to get away from this and that, and it has some comedy in there with that. But but it turned out to be a fun movie to watch. Eventually, it turned into a um, it turned into what it kind of you kind of thought it would turn into, where he's basically do find out who the cartel person is, and he's trying to basically get away from the cartel person. Um, but it was a fun movie. I mean, there was a lot of they brought up a lot of there was a lot of nostalgia. If you're a big Nicolas Cage fan, there was a lot of like his old movies, old things he said in movies, scenes from movies. A whole bunch of stuff was brought up in this movie that just kind of made you kind of smile. And like Nicolas Cage is one like the first Nicolas Cage movie I ever seen. Probably it might be. I don't even know if this is his first. This might be his first movie, but Raising Arizona was the first Nicolas Cage movie I've seen. And of course that movie was kind of a comedy. But then right after that, the next couple of movies I've seen of Nicolas Cage was like The Rock, um, Con Air, and then Face Off. Those three. And if you know those movies, those were all action movies. You know, and but he's done a whole lot of different types of movies. And like now he makes tons of every time you turn around, there's a new movie with Nicolas Cage on the cover. And when you watch them, sometimes they're horrible, sometimes they're okay. I mean, I haven't seen a good Nicolas Cage movie in a long time, but sometimes they're watchable and sometimes they're just really bad. I've watched one recently that was really bad. I couldn't even make it to the end of it. Um, but and then of course he did the Ghost Rider movies, which they weren't really good movies. I was trying to I was trying to be nice about it, but let's be honest, they weren't really good movies. Even though I do like him as Ghost Rider, but the movies themselves they weren't really good. Um, but yeah, it was just fun. It's fun when you watch something and they do a lot of things that remind you of things that you may have forgotten about. Like they show scenes from movies. Like there are times in this movie where they may be walking through somewhere and there's a television on and one of his movies is playing on the television, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And and that's fun. I like that kind of stuff. It was fun, and that's the kind of stuff that made this movie kind of enjoyable for me. And then the comedy was pretty good. Nicolas Cage kind of played a real down and out. He was a really exaggerated version of himself because he was like really arrogant. He was arrogant and he was kind of really entitled. He was like a really exaggerated version of himself, which kind of just added to the comedy, because while he was kind of an arrogant, entitled person, he was also down on his luck and broke and everything like that. So that made for some fun, watching the movie. And then on top of that, he had it was pretty funny because they had scenes where he would be talking to himself. It's sort of like he kind of like I don't know if he was like going crazy or what, but he was kind of imagining that he's having a conversation with himself. So they had a younger version of Nicolas Cage would show up on the screen, like he would be sitting in a bar having a drink, and then next a younger version of himself is sitting beside him, and he's having conversations with this person, which was pretty interesting to see. Today's Nicolas Cage and then the younger version of Nicolas Cage. I guess they used some kind of de-aging technology to create that part of it, or maybe it was all CGI. But they're having conversations with each other. Of course, it's all in his head and everything, but it was just pretty funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Um, I like the comedy. It was sort of like I mean, it started off slow paced, like I said, but the comedy was still there and it was still interesting. And then at the end, it got into the action and it was just a fun movie. It was a fun movie. I haven't seen it's been a long time since I've seen a Nicolas Cage movie that I actually liked. So it was nice to watch this one again because Nicolas Cage had his moments. He had some really good movies. He had some really funny movies. But then, recently he's done a lot of stuff that's just like he's just there for a paycheck. He's just putting his face on stuff, and they aren't all that good. And they're not even the ones I'm talking about are not theatrical released movies. They are movies that are probably straight to streaming and stuff like that. But it does seem like every time I turn around, there's another one. But yeah, this one was really good. I enjoyed it. Nicolas Cage, a lot of the things that if you watch a lot of Nicolas Cage movies, he does a lot of weird, crazy stuff, which is fun. When you think of Nicolas Cage, you think of him doing that weird, crazy stuff, the yelling and all of that kind of stuff. And he does that in this movie, which I enjoyed. And the thing about this movie is when it was over with, it just made me want to go. I didn't do it, but it just made me want to go back and watch some of his old stuff. Like I remember seeing Con Air in the theaters. I'll tell you how old I am, but I remember seeing Con Air in the theaters, and like I haven't seen it in years and years and years. I don't even really remember what that movie was about now, but I do remember enjoying that movie when I went to see it in the theaters, because at that time I still saw Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage was, for me at that time, he was still the guy from Raising Arizona, the goofy, crazy, wild guy in that wild, crazy movie. So to see him in the action movie and then do well in the action movie, I like to see when people do things as different than what they've done before and they do well. And he was one of the ones that he did that back then, but it just made watching this movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, it just made me want to go back and watch some of his old stuff, but yeah, but that was pretty good. I would say go and check it out. Who else was in this movie? Okay, so Tiffany Haddish, I didn't know she was in this movie. I don't know how I missed that. Because when she first showed up in this movie, I was like, oh, I didn't know she was in here. I don't know how I missed that. But like I said, I only saw the previews once, and it was probably about a week before the movie came out. So, and I'm pretty sure she probably was in the previews. I don't know how I missed it though. But she was in this movie, and I kind of liked her character in this movie. Tiffany Haddish is one of those people that I was really high on for a while. And I think that I've said before, if you watch a lot of my videos, you've heard me say this before, but there are some actors, that when they are in movies, they kind of play a version of themselves, Will Smith is one of those actors. A lot of his movies, he's playing the Will Smith character. Denzel Washington, a lot of his movie, he's playing the Denzel Washington character. Ryan Reynolds, another one. A lot of his movies, he's playing the Ryan Reynolds character, which is basically Deadpool. And a lot of these movies, you have these actors that do that. And some actors, Kevin Hart, another one, and some actors, they do that, and that's what you go there for. You go there to see them play the Denzel Washington character, and you like that, and I like that, and it's good. Now, Tiffany Haddish is also an actor that I think that does that. She plays a Tiffany Haddish character, but at some point, I kind of got tired of the Tiffany Haddish character, so I got to the point where I kind of lost a lot of interest in movies that had her in it. Whereas one time I was like, oh, she's in this movie, I want to see it. But I kind of got to a point where I kind of lost that, But she's been in a couple things recently that I liked, One of them is a TV show, which I can't remember the name of the TV show. She plays a detective in that show, where it was like a comedy mystery TV show. Let's see, we can look at it right here, see what it is. Let's check it out. I'm gonna do some searching while I'm here with you guys on this live stream to find out what show that is. It is called The After Party. This show here. Okay, so this show, I liked her in this show. I liked this show, and I thought she was pretty good in this show. She basically played this same character in the in the Nicolas Cage movie, but she was serious. In this show, she was serious in this show, but she was serious in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, But in the Nicolas Cage movie, she was straight up serious. It was no tongue in cheek. She was a CIA agent, and she was straight up a serious person. But she basically played that same type of character. But I liked her in this show. I thought she did pretty good. And maybe she might turn the corner for me again. I know I got to where I wasn't as high on her as I once was, but maybe she's about to turn the corner for me again. but yeah, so far I enjoyed this show. I mean, I enjoyed this movie. Like I said, it was a little slow. And the thing about it being slow is that it ended well for me. It had a good ending, and I enjoyed the ending so much that the parts sort of towards the beginning that I felt was slow, it kind of paid off for me and kind of made me forget about how I felt when things were moving along slower than I thought it would be. But the ending I thought was pretty good and it made it all worth it. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it. The unbearable weight of massive talent. You should go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. I think it's still in the theaters. I saw it about 2 weeks ago, 2 weekends ago. Um, and when I was planning for this live stream, I was trying to think of. I knew I had seen the several movies that I wanted to talk about, and I couldn't remember the last one. And this was it. And I was like, oh yeah, the Nicolas Cage one. All right, so that's where you have it. Unbearable weight of massive talent. Nicolas Cage playing himself, and it was pretty fun. It was a fun movie to watch. I would say if you and you don't have to be a all out full on Nicolas Cage fan to enjoy this movie. The movie stands on its own. Nicolas Cage is fun. The fact that he's in this movie is fun, but the movie stands on its own. It doesn't basically require you to be a Nicolas Cage fan to enjoy this movie. So if you saw the previews for this movie and you think, oh, I don't know anything about Nicolas Cage, I don't watch his movies, so I wouldn't get nothing out of it. Don't think about it that way. You don't necessarily need to. If you do have a little bit of knowledge of his movies, you might have a little bit of an edge on versus someone who don't have any knowledge at all about his movies. But if you don't have any knowledge at all, it's still a serviceable movie. It's still a fun watch. If anything, what it'll make you do is it'll make you want to go out and start checking out his movies. Seeing what he's done in the past. Because he does have some pretty good stuff. So that's Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. All right. So if you just checking in, once again, I want to introduce myself. I'm DL Jones. This is the DL Jones Show. And make sure you click like, subscribe on this video. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep the live stream up for replay when this is over with. It'll be up there in one way or another, but make sure you click like and subscribe because come back and check out some of my other stuff. I think I'm going to start focusing on live streams now though, because I'm kind of having fun with this. I just did it as a test a couple of weeks ago and I enjoyed it so much that I did it again the following week. And I think I'm going to do more of these live streams. I kind of enjoy it. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about on my list, I got two more things I want to talk about, which of course, the main thing I want to talk about is Doctor Strange. But I'm not going to talk about it just yet. I think I'm going to talk about, let's see me pull this movie up here because this is something that I've talked about recently. It's over now, but a lot of people have, of course, a lot of people have done their thing, has done their little stint on this show. Let me pull it up here so you guys will know what I'm talking about. And that's this right here. The show that everybody was waiting on that came out and left. And, I'm kind of thinking a lot of people is going to probably forget about it, and I'll tell you why. So this show, Moon Knight, Moon Knight is a character that I don't know a whole lot about, Um, like I've said before, when I was a kid, I used to read comics. Um, but I eventually stopped, and for the most part, I still kept up with what was going on, especially in the Marvel. I was more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan. I kind of didn't like DC because most of their heroes like Superman and Green Lantern and all. A lot of their heroes was just completely just overpowered heroes. They could do everything, you know. Whatever they needed to do, they had a power that did it, you know. And then you had the heroes like Batman, who were just regular people, but they still could do everything, you know. And I just didn't like that. I like heroes that the kind of I think it's more interesting to have a hero that has a combination of smaller powers that work well together than to have a hero that has a bunch of godlike powers that make them pretty much invincible and automatically beat everybody that they fight, you know. And that was what I would find the differences in between Marvel and the DC characters, you know. But anyway, I used to keep up, I still kept up with them, but Moon Knight is a character that I didn't keep up with. Other than I knew who the character was, I didn't know anything about it. I never looked into Moon Knight. But when they announced that there was going to be a Moon Knight TV show, I was excited about it because, you know, even though I didn't keep up with Moon Knight, what I thought about Moon Knight was, and I've said this on one of my earlier live streams, is that Moon Knight to me kind of looked like I kind of always thought of Moon Knight as Daredevil in a white suit. You know, I kind of felt like he was the type of character that, you know, he was a street level superhero, which means he fought like a lot of humans, you know, instead of fighting other superpowered beings. I kind of felt like he fought a lot of humans, and he did it like with fighting, you know, sort of like Daredevil, you know, and that was who I thought Moon Knight was. But when you watch the show, he's not that, you know, he's not that. And then I've done some more research on him since then. And it seems like in the comics, depending on who's writing him, he is different. Like, depending on who's writing him, he may actually just be a guy in a armored uniform fighting people, you know, using martial arts. Or sometimes he has like weird powers, you know. But this show kind of took the route. I think it followed a story, like an actual storyline from the comics. But this show followed the route where he actually had powers. You know, he's not just a guy that fights. You know, he actually have powers. He have super strength. He can run fast and all of that kind of stuff. And he gets his powers from the god of the moon god, Khonshu, and that's who he gets his powers from. He's like the avatar of Khonshu, because the mythology in this series is that there are all of these different types of Egyptian gods, and while they can't do anything on earth, they have to have humans that they grant powers to, and that human becomes that god's avatar, and so that human can go and do that god's bidding on earth, you know. And that's what Moon Knight is. He was granted powers from the moon god Khonshu, and he does the things that Khonshu wants him to do, you know. And what Khonshu wants him to do is to punish evil, you know, stuff like that, you know. So this movie, this TV show, it really gets in the weeds with a lot of the Egyptian gods and all of this kind of stuff. And I didn't really find that part of this show interesting. You know, it was a lot of stuff going on in this show that was kind of confusing, and I don't necessarily know if it was really confusing or more so that I was so bored with those particular aspects of the show that I didn't pay enough attention to those to understand fully what was going on in those situations. I got the gist of the show, but there were some things that I didn't find that interesting, that I didn't care to pay enough attention to really get into those sections. But of course, I did like the show, and I liked the character. You know, it was pretty good. You know, it was only 6 episodes, you know, and it was kind of a little bit different than a lot of the other Disney Plus Marvel shows it had so far. And the way I say that is that the show, instead of feeling like, you know, a lot of times they're talking about these shows and they say it feel like a long movie. But like, you look at a lot of shows like WandaVision and Loki and Hawkeye and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it's a long overarching story that goes throughout the whole season. And sometimes you watch it and you look at it like it's a long movie, but it really isn't when it compares to Moon Knight was a long movie. those shows, they still had episodes. They still had episodes with beginning, middles, and ends and stuff like that. And each episode had a theme and all this kind of stuff. Now, Moon Knight was really like a long movie. So much so that there were episodes that just end. There were episodes that, the thing comes on and it kind of, you get to a point where it feels like you watched like the third act of a movie and then the episode ends, and you're like, what? And you got to wait to the next week to see what happens next. And then when you go to the next week, it just picks up like it was like a 6-hour movie that they just cut off at certain spots and then gave it to you in hour chunks, and that's how it felt. It felt like they really filmed a 6-hour movie, and I don't know if I like that. I'd rather it be episodes, like traditional episodes, where there is something that happens at the beginning of the episode that is solved by the end of the episode. I think I like that better. I kind of always thought that I would like it if they just filmed it like a long movie and broke it up. I kind of always thought that I would like that, but now that I've seen it, where this is probably the closest that it has actually been to being that way with the Moon Knight series. Now that I've seen it, I kind of don't think that I liked it that much as the way it was presented to me. But that's not to say I didn't like the show, because I did enjoy the show, Now, my thoughts on the show, there are some people out there that really, really like the show. I can't say that I'm one of those people. I just had a mild enjoyment. I had the type of enjoyment where I want to see more of that character in other things. And I don't know if they will show him in other things. As of right now, I don't think they signed him to do anything beyond this series. I'm kind of suspecting that that probably in a couple of weeks we're probably going to hear something, an announcement or something where we'll get to see Moon Knight again. But as of right now, there aren't any public plans for anything beyond what we've seen so far. And then and looking at it that way, as much as I was excited about the character and about the show, and then watching the show and seeing how the show went through and ended, I kind of feel like they wasted that character, because I kind of feel like they wasted that character. While I did enjoy the show, when it was over with, I wasn't satisfied. I felt like they wasted the character. I don't know how else to explain it. I just feel like they wasted the character. I don't know. Maybe they'll redeem him somehow later on, but I kind of feel like they wasted the character. Now, the last episode, which is, there was a couple of episodes in the middle, episode 4 and 5, which like I said in the last time I talked about this, I had just finished watching episode 4. And what I said at that time was that, I explained about how I don't really like when shows have dream sequences or flashbacks and stuff like that. That's something that I never really like when shows do that. And episode 4 did that. It wasn't really a dream sequence, but it was a same type of thing, but it did that on episode 4, and I enjoyed that, which normally I don't enjoy that when shows do that. But then they did it again in episode 5. They did 2 whole episodes that was basically their version of a dream sequence. And when I did like it in episode 4, in episode 5, I was over it. I was like, they wasted 2 whole episodes on a dream sequence, and I didn't like that. And it was because I knew it was only 6 episodes, and I feel like they was wasting time. I felt like they needed to do something else. They needed to do something else. So then we get to episode 6, and it kind of made up for it. There was a lot of action. You got to see Moon Knight battle and Mr. Knight battle and all of this kind of stuff. And it was a lot of cool fight scenes and a lot of cool things happened. And then the episode ended, and that was the end of it. And I kind of felt like, I don't know, even though I enjoyed the episode and I enjoyed the season, I felt like they wasted the character. I felt like it was a waste. I felt like they should have done something different if they was going to do this. And I don't know. I mean, I hope they bring the character back for other stuff, but I don't know. As of right now, they don't have any plans, any public plans anyway. Um, but if some after I watched and it wasn't after I watched Moon Knight. I started feeling this way when I watched Moon Knight, when Moon Knight was over, but it was after I saw the movie that I'm going to talk about next. Doctor Strange 2, I started thinking back, I started thinking back to Moon Knight and how I felt at the end of Moon Knight. And I realized something. I came to a realization, and that realization is Marvel has kind of peaked. And they peaked at Avengers Endgame. There's been a lot of stuff that came out since Endgame, but I think they peaked at Endgame. Okay, so you've had um since Endgame, you've had Black Widow, which Black Widow was kind of a mediocre movie. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't up to par, with Endgame or that type of movie. Like the movies that came before Endgame, it was a slow build. It started off with like Iron Man and all of that kind of stuff. And it was a slow build in each movie. Some was better than others, but they kind of built up, They had like all of those many years to build up to make you so excited to where it got to a point to where every Marvel movie was like an event movie. And they haven't been like that since, Or if it was an event movie, you saw it and then it turned out not to be an event movie. The hype was making you think it was going to be an event movie, but then you saw the movie and it turned out not to be an event movie. You have Shang-Chi, which Shang-Chi is probably one of the better ones out of everything that's came out since Endgame. But then again, Shang-Chi to me felt like they tried to do the same thing for Asian people that they did for Black people with Black Panther. And while I do think that they were successful in making a good movie, I just don't feel like it had the same impact or was on the same level of epicness, which sounds silly, but that's the most easy word that I can think of to just try to describe what I'm thinking. As Black Panther. And then you had all of the Marvel shows. You had WandaVision, which was a weird show. I enjoyed it, but I can't really say that it lived up to my expectations. Then you had Loki, which is the same thing. You had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was also, the same thing, kind of didn't live up to my expectations. Then you had Hawkeye, which was a really, really fun show, but it's Hawkeye, and then you have Moon Knight, which at the end, I'm even though I enjoyed the show, I'm feeling like it was a waste of a character, and then we have Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness. And I'm gonna be talking about that in a second and my thoughts on that. But basically, just thinking back to all of those things, I just kind of feel like the MCU has peaked at Endgame. And I don't know if I mean, is it over well, it's not over, of course, because they're still making tons of money and the movies aren't bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm still enjoying the movies, just not as much as I was before, but I'm wondering if this is like the beginning of the downslide of the MCU, and I don't think it's fatigue because it's not that I'm tired of seeing the movies. I want to see more, but I'm just not I don't know, I'm just not enjoying them as much as I was before. They don't feel like great event movies like they once did. I mean, I go into them thinking, okay, this is the one, but then I watch it and I'm thinking, it was good, I enjoyed it, but no, it wasn't the one. um and I'll tell you, since none of the superhero movies have really been doing that. DC, they've kind of been they've kind of been hit and miss. They started out like they was going to come on strong. They had Wonder Woman, which was really good. You had Aquaman, that was really good. But then other than that, they've kind of just, been either mediocre to bad, with everything else that they've been doing. And then they had the Batman, which was good, but I'm not a Batman is not one of my favorite characters, I don't know. DC is weird because I don't like the characters as much in DC as I do in Marvel. So for me, and this may sound bad, for me, they have to do a lot more for me to feel the same way as I feel with a movie that did less in the Marvel universe for me to, enjoy it or whatever. And then you look at the Sonyverse. I don't know what you call that, the Sony Marvel characters. And then, of course, you got Spider-Man, which Spider-Man has been awesome. Spider-Man has lived up to the hype. Spider-Man No Way Home has lived up to the hype, the Spider-Man No Way Home was an event movie. And after I watched it, I still felt like it was an event movie. But everything else they've been doing, it's been horrible. The Venom movies are bad and they keep making them. Morbius is bad. And now they're thinking about doing what is they going to do now? They're going to do like a movie based on Kraven the Hunter. I don't understand why they keep making these movies based on villains. I don't want to see a superhero movie with the villain as the main character. I don't know why they keep doing that. Even though the Joker movie, when they did, when they announced that movie, I was like, why are you going to make a movie based on a villain? I'd rather see Batman than the Joker. And that ended up being really good. So I guess in that situation, I was wrong there. But yeah, the Sony superhero universe, I don't know. They keep trying to make this Sinister Six thing work, and I don't, and it's not working, I believe you can make it work, but they're not making it work. The only thing that's working for them right now is Spider-Man, is the core Spider-Man movies. And all of the other ones, they're making money. I don't know what Morbius did, but Venom has been making money. I think both Venoms have made pretty good money, but they just aren't good movies. I just don't really care for them. And I say they aren't good movies, but I keep going to see them. And if they make another Venom movie, I'm still going to go and see it. And I'm going to be sitting right here again telling you how, I don't know why I saw it wasn't a good movie, why they keep making them. But that's just how it is. When it comes to those movies, the superhero movies, I got to go see them, whether they end up being good or not, But yeah, I don't know. What's next is Thor. Thor is the next MCU movie after Doctor Strange, and I'm curious. I saw the trailers and stuff. They just started releasing those, and they look pretty good so far. But before we start talking about that, let's get into the main. Let's get into the main show. Let me pull this up right quick. Let me get rid of some of the stuff I have here. I got a bunch of tabs open here I need to get rid of. Let's see. Let me get rid of some of this stuff here. Let me cancel this right quick. So let me get rid of this one. Let me get rid of all of this stuff right now. All right. I had to clean things up a little bit. I got a bunch of tabs open the tabs that I was showing up on the screen. All right. So now what I want to show you now is what we're going to be talking about here in a second. This may be the last topic of the night. I've been up here for about a little over an hour. So this might be the last topic of the night, but it's the one that, I know everybody's been waiting on. And where is it at? If I can find it here. The movie of the week, Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. Let me make sure I got the right thing here. All right, so I saw that this weekend. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. All right, so I have been waiting for this movie for a while, because when you look at all of the movies that came out this year, you had Shang-Chi, you had Spider-Man No Way Home, and then you had the Disney DC stuff. So Shang-Chi, while I was interested in Shang-Chi, I didn't have a lot of faith in that movie. I didn't think it was going to do well. Um, but it turned out to be a movie that did well. I really liked that movie. Um, but the one that I was waiting on was Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. To me, that movie seemed like it was a core MCU movie. It wasn't a new character that kind of felt experimental or anything like that. It was Doctor Strange, the character that we was introduced, the character that was in Endgame, the character that was in a lot of the later versions of the last phase of the MCU movies. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is the one that's going to bring us back to feeling like we did before. This is it. Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. All right, so let's see. Do I even have this up here? Where is it at? Where is it at? I want to read the synopsis for this movie right quick, so then we can get to talking about what this movie was about. I'm gonna pull this up on the screen right quick so we can read it. Bear with me for a minute. All right, so let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so Dr. Stephen Strange cast a forbidden spell that opens the doorway to the multiverse, including alternate versions of himself, whose threat to humanity is too great for the combined forces of Strange, Wong, and Wanda Maximoff. Now, first off, that synopsis is not. Does he open a spell? I don't remember him opening a spell that does anything to the multiverse. And maybe that synopsis is there to hide a specific character. Maybe that's why that synopsis is written that way. Yeah, because he doesn't open a spell to the multiverse. All right, so basically, now like I said, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I'm going to talk about some things that may be spoiler-ish. So basically, this movie, what happens is this whole movie is about Doctor Strange trying to protect this girl, the one that's on the screen right here. Her. Now, who she is America Chavez. Now, America Chavez is a fairly new MCU character. And basically, I mean, she has typical superpowers. She's strong and all of that kind of stuff. Um, but the main thing about her character that makes her special is that she has the ability to travel from one universe to another. Now she can travel through the multiverse. That's her power. She can travel through the multiverse. Um, like she'll like punch something and it opens up like a portal and she stepped through the portal and she can go to a different part of the multiverse, Earth this and Earth that and Earth this and Earth that, just different. She gets to travel through the multiverse. So what happens in this movie is that she is being chased by creatures and stuff like that, and she ends up in the main MCU universe, which is the 616 universe. And she runs into Doctor Strange. Now, they show her before she ran into Doctor Strange, and she was being helped by another Doctor Strange in a different universe. And that Doctor Strange kind of betrayed her, but he ended up getting killed. And so she punches punches a portal, and she ends up in the main MCU universe running right into Doctor Strange. And that is where, when she meets up with him, that's where the creature that was chasing her ends up in that universe too. And that's the big octopus creature, Gigantos, that you see in the trailers of Doctor Strange and Wong is fighting and stuff like that. So she meets up with him. So the whole movie is basically him trying to protect her because somebody is trying to um, take her powers, and you find out, is no spoiler. You find out that person is actually, you know what? I'm not going to tell you who that person is because if you haven't seen this movie yet, I kind of feel like who this person is a was a surprise to me because I didn't realize that that's what this was going to be about. Even though I think a lot of the spoilers tell you, if you've been keeping up with spoilers, I think a lot of them tell you. But when I found out that that is exactly what it is, I was kind of surprised that they went that way. But anyway, Doctor Strange goes to help her, and in the event of helping her, they end up traveling through different Earths. Actually, they travel through different Earths, but for the most part, they only really go to one other alternate universe. And 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 while they're there, a lot of cool things happen there that a lot of things that's been teased, but it was just really, really cool things that happened at that other Earth. Um, and then of course, at the end, Doctor Strange solves it, you know. But and that's my non-spoilery version of what this movie is about, what happens in this movie. But the thing about this movie that I really liked a lot of stuff to happen in this movie because it's no secret there were lots of cameos. A lot of the cameos in this movie were spoiled. Um, but even though they were spoiled, there were still things that I didn't know about that was going to be in there. There was one thing that I found out about this movie that was spoiled for me like days before the movie released. I didn't even know that this particular cameo was going to be in the movie until days before the movie released. But then when I saw the movie, there was still some cameos that I didn't know about that was in there, and there were some cameos that I heard about that I was spoiled that wasn't in the movie. So I'm thinking when they shot this movie, I'm thinking they probably filmed a lot of cameos, but they didn't use all of them. Or maybe they made different decisions as the production of this movie went on as far as which cameos that they were going to use. Um, but of course, you see in the most recent trailer, you see Professor X. Professor X is in the movie. You straight up see him in the most recent trailer. I kind of feel like the trailers gave away too much, and it kind of reminded me of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Now, Spider-Man: No Way Home, if you've seen that movie, which I'm guessing everybody saw it now because that movie made tons of money. But if you see that movie, there was a lot of special characters in that movie that was brought back. A lot of cameos, a lot of really, really cool stuff. And while they were also teased when that movie came out, and a lot of people might have known it, those cameos made that movie pretty awesome. So I kind of felt like, Doctor Strange, they seem like they're trying to go after it the same way, and it's going to be like that. And while I do think those cameos in Doctor Strange was awesome, um, really, really cool. Really, really cool, really good stuff that I want to see. I and the scenes with those extra cameos was awesome, but I still like I was just saying a few minutes ago, where I said that it felt like the MCU peaked at Endgame. This movie didn't change that feeling for me. While I did enjoy this movie and I thought it was really good, I still came away from it with that same feeling that the MCU has peaked. Um, I really liked this movie. Like I said, it was a lot of cameos. It was a lot of cool stuff to happen in this movie. But I liked Spider-Man: No Way Home better. I kind of feel like both of those movies, Spider-Man: No Way Home and Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, I kind of feel like they both did kind of the same thing. They kind of had a movie where they brought in, well, they didn't necessarily, they didn't bring it in Doctor Strange. They went to a world that had a lot of cameos, whereas Spider-Man: No Way Home, that was in the main world, but a lot of cameos was brought to that world. But they both kind of went about it the same way. The whole um draw of both of those movies were the characters, were the extra surprise cameo secret characters that was brought into that movie. And while, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the characters that were in Doctor Strange, I think they were better characters, more interesting characters, characters I was more excited to see, but I had more enjoyment and more fun with the characters that was brought into Spider-Man No Way Home. And that's not to say that Doctor Strange is bad. I really like this movie. I really, really like this movie. I left out of that movie just thinking about all of the things, all of the characters that brought in and what it could mean going forward and all of this kind of stuff. Even though a lot of those characters that was brought in was kind of set in a way where it could potentially just be self-contained to this movie. You may not ever see them again. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the movie. Now, America Chavez, this character here that's on the screen, she was pretty interesting. Also, she was a fun character. I don't know too much about that character. She's one of the newer characters in the MCU. The MCU has a lot of younger characters now that they've introduced in the last 10 years or so, and she's one of them. And I'm really thinking that that the MCU is kind of gearing up to have the new Avengers, which was a lot of the younger characters. Of course, like the Miss Marvel series, which is another teenage superhero that's going to be released on Disney Plus here, I think at the end of this month. And then you got, Hawkeye with, the Hawkeye series that was on Disney Plus. It has the, Kate Bishop. I think they're kind of bringing in a lot of these younger characters, gearing up for the new Avengers team. They're probably going to start making movies and stuff based on them. And America Chavez is one of those characters too. And I thought she was pretty cool. Now, in this movie, she was, I guess it was kind of early on for her because one of the things about this movie, about her character in this movie, was that she didn't really know how to use her powers. Like every time she punched a hole and opened up a portal to a different version of the multiverse, a different Earth, it wasn't like she did it on purpose. It always happened like when she was scared or when she was panicking or something like that, then it happened. And then she'll bounce from, wherever she was to a different multiverse. So she doesn't have control over her powers yet. She don't know how to use her powers at will yet. Like, for example, in the comics, part of her powers is that she's super strong. And it was like she didn't really even utilize it that much in this movie, almost like she didn't realize that she was super strong. I don't know. But other than that, I really like the character. I want to see her in. I can't wait to the MCU get these younger characters together and start working together and start making movies with them. Maybe that's when the event feel of a MCU movie will come back, when they get into that phase. But yeah, I didn't have, even though I enjoyed this movie a lot, I didn't have that same feeling. It's still, I didn't come away from this movie feeling any different than what I was saying a little while ago about me thinking that the MCU has peaked. It's funny because I have a coworker. I was talking about, we were talking about movies recently, and today, as a matter of fact, and I was just listing what was next. I mentioned that Miss Marvel is next, and then a month later, Thor comes out. Thor: Love and Thunder comes out. So this particular coworker, I guess he's kind of feeling the same way I've been feeling. But this coworker said that, well, after watching Moon Knight and Doctor Strange 2, if those aren't any better than this, I'm probably not going to feel as excited about it as I once was, when it comes to a Marvel movie. And I kind of agree with him because one thing, there's a movie guy that I used to watch all the time. I don't watch him anymore, but I used to watch him all the time. And he used to always talk about how sequels benefit from the movie before it. How, like, if a movie, let's say a movie come out and makes $100 million, $500 million, the first movie come out and make $500 million, and then when it comes out with the sequel, it's always expected that the sequel will do more, because it's building off the momentum of the first movie. Um, and I think that that's right now we're going through that. Like a lot of these movies are making a bunch of money, even though they're not as good as what came before them, by several movies now, I would say by about 2 years now, they're not as good as the movies that came before them, but they're still making a bunch of money. And the reason why is because they're still living off the momentum that those previous movies made, and at some point, if they don't bring the quality back up, that momentum is going to start to slow down, and I don't know how long it's going to take for that to happen. Um, but at some point it's going to start to slow down. You can't live off of Endgame forever. You can't live off the Endgame momentum forever. It's gonna be a point where that momentum, where it's gonna be so many movies that were just like okay movies, that the luster is going to start dulling a little bit. The things that was making people excited is no longer going to be there for them to get that excited about it, and it's going to get to a point where you know it's just going to slowly start to, you know, go down. The excitement going to slowly start to dwindle, little by little. It might take a long time before it really have any real effect, because there's so much built up right now, so many years of built up excitement that has. I mean, look at Star Wars, right? Star Wars, everybody loved the very first trilogy. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Everybody loves that. But since then, people have been critical of almost every single movie that's came out since then, but it's still making tons of money. It's still living off of that initial nostalgia, that initial momentum that the very first trilogy gained. And even though people are complaining about it, every movie after movie after movie, people are complaining about it. They're still watching it. They're still going to see it because it's still living on. But at some point, it's going to start dwindling. And I feel the same way with the MCU. And I'm talking like it's doom and gloom, but it's not really doom and gloom, because the movies that they've been making, um, like Doctor Strange is still a good movie. I really enjoyed it, but a lot of my enjoyment comes from past built up enjoyment for the MCU in general, and not necessarily because the movie lived up to what it once was. I mean, it's still good. I still enjoyed it, but it's not like it was. It's not like it once was. It's not like the MCU movie that felt like an event. Like Black Panther. Black Panther felt like an event when I saw that movie. Endgame felt like an event when I saw that movie. Civil War, Captain America Civil War felt like an event when I saw that movie. And I haven't had that feeling in a while in the MCU. And but I'm still going to see the movies, and I'll still go see some more. They have to get really, really bad before I not go see them. But everybody's not going to be like me. Some people are going to start dropping off, so they need that next event. They need that next thing that's going to bring them back up, to build that momentum back up, to take them back up a flight of stairs. I'm sitting here playing with this little thing here, but they need that next movie. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't think Thor is going to be it. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But I don't. I don't think it's going to be it. I don't think it's going to happen again until they get to the next phase, till they come up with the next thing. And right now, I kind of feel like they're spinning their wheels. With a lot of stuff that's going on, it kind of feel like that they have something that they're working on, but they just haven't got there yet, and they're waiting. I don't know. Maybe the next thing is going to be the new Avengers with all of the younger Avengers. Um, But I really enjoyed the movie. They had a lot of cool cameos. I hate that I want to talk about it. Maybe I'll do another video where I actually talk about the cameos and everything that would be straight up spoilers. But I'm not going to do that here. All I gotta say is that if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out, because while I kind of sound a little bit down, I'm not as down on this movie as I sound like I am. Um, you know, I still really enjoyed it, and I still feel like it's a must watch. But yeah, Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, I really enjoyed the movie. Even though I kind of feel like the MCU is not what it once was, I still enjoyed the movie. I still feel like this is one of the better ones that has came out since post Endgame. Um, but it doesn't hit that same spot. Um, and I don't know when the MCU will get back to that point where it hits that same spot again. But yeah, check it out. Let's see. Do I have anything else? That was the last thing I wanted to talk about. I think that's it. So before I go, I just want to remind you again. Like I said, I created an account on Locals. If you look at the bottom of the screen, um, you see, visit me on locals.com, and I put the URL to my profile, which, like I said, is nothing there yet. I just created the account, but I'm going to start using it. I'm going to start posting stuff up there. So go ahead and go over to there now, and go ahead and follow me. Now, the way locals kind of work a little bit like Patreon, where you can subscribe to different communities, and there's different tiers, and there's monthly payments and stuff like that. But there is always a free tier. And right now, I don't have any of that set up. So just go out there and follow me. It is free to follow me. You have to create an account, but it's free to follow me, and you'll start seeing the stuff that I'm going to be posting. But I'm going to start posting stuff there. Some stuff that I might stuff that I was planning on doing here on YouTube in the membership tab, the membership form. I never set up the memberships here, but the stuff that I was planning on doing here on the memberships, I think I'm gonna do it there on Locals, or I'm gonna test it out for a little while, see how it works out. So go ahead and check me out there. Make sure subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and do that. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, click the like button on all the videos, and if you don't like a video, go ahead and click that. Really show me you don't like it by clicking the like button twice. Click that like button twice. Really let me know you don't like it. Yeah, a little joke. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I think I'm gonna be doing this live streaming more. I might do another one this week. I got something else I want to talk about this week, so I might end up doing another one later on this week. But I enjoyed this. I love coming up here and just talking about all of the things I like watching, my thoughts on stuff. Sometimes I might ramble, but it's still fun. It's still fun to talk about. So, yeah, that's all I got for today. I'll see you next time.